Barrett Sallee, CBS Sports National College Football Analyst. Hey, Barrett, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
Thanks, Ryan. Hope you're doing well as well.
Yeah, and I heard you talking about the sports gambling and just sort of your thoughts. And for those who may not have been able to catch your interview there or your show, just wanted to ask you maybe summarize your thoughts about this latest sports gambling thing that was released.
Well, I think it's really good for all pro sports, all amateur, or all college athletics. I think it's really good for everybody because here's the thing: there are 3 points that I think are being hit on both sides right now. The truth of the matter is, point shaving exists right now, and if you legalize sports gambling, it will be easier to regulate point shaving in all sports because assuming you have nationwide sports gambling, which essentially you will have. That means you have a national commission. And when abnormal bets come in that, move the meter, you're going to be able to hear about it quicker. And David Purdom of ESPN.com has a great story out today about, it was Brian Windhorst, the NBA writer, talking about when a tweet resulted in $10 million being flushed to on the side of the Cleveland Cavaliers, because 3 players who were thought to not be playing, LeBron James being one of them, suddenly decided to play. And that was okay because that was a real thing that happened, but they shut down books within 10 minutes of this tweet. They readjusted their lines, and they went on with their lives. And so you're going to have regulation that exists. I think in terms of finances, this is great for everybody because money can be doled out to local municipalities, regions, states, whatever. And I think there's this misnomer out there, well, gambling tears families apart. And, it's a disease and it's an addiction. And that's all true. But it's not like you can't gamble now. I mean, if you want to gamble, you gamble now.
Sure.
It's not that hard to do it. And so, why regulate morality? I mean, if someone's got a problem and they go to a casino, I would say that's much easier to detect that problem than gambling online. So, I think it's good from a tax standpoint. And then from a college standpoint, I think it's a pretty good way to introduce payment to players really easily, to be honest with you. Because the problem with paying players is that some players play sports and are more marketable and should generate more revenue for themselves and for their programs. Others don't in other sports. You have Title IX implications. Well, let's just do this. Let's just have the NCAA take a percentage, whatever it is, off the top of every college game that's bet on and put that percentage into a savings account. And at the end of every calendar year, that gets doled out evenly to every college athlete that participates in NCAA-sanctioned sports. That way you don't have a disproportionate amount of money being doled out. That means they're getting their share, not a fair share, but their share of the pie, and you sort of get through all of those loopholes like Title IX and things like that, and you open the door for more payments. I don't see why this is a bad thing. In fact, I think everything about this is really, really good.
And Barrett, I hate to be selfish, but look at it from a media standpoint, because I think the interest is going to go through the roof from a media standpoint. I mean, we're going to have people that have an interest in what we do daily, because it's going to influence the way that they bet. Okay, I mean, if I go out here and we have an injury report, or I get some kind of exclusive, behind the scenes, which is, medical is hard to report, but if I have the scoop, I mean, it's going to create everybody's going to benefit from this.
Yeah, I mean, that happens now, but it's not, I think here's the thing I think that's not being talked about either is fan interest is going to be a big deal, but, I would imagine if you have sports gambling in casinos that aren't built yet, a lot of these places, let's just take Atlanta, for example. There's that Lucky Marietta district that's right down by the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and Phillips Arena and the park and all that stuff. You put a casino down there, and you're going to draw people in and to bet on, let's just say, the Falcons game or the SEC championship game or next year the kickoff game between Auburn and Washington. People will go into those casinos, and then they're more likely to go buy a ticket to watch the game. So, fan interest in terms of going to games has always been a problem the last 10 years. It's always been, fighting against the 70-inch flat screen and all that stuff. Well, if you legalize sports betting, one would think that not all, but some of these casinos would go near major sporting arenas. that would draw people to the area, which draws them to the game, in which the increases the value of whatever sport it is. And, you're right. I mean, look, there's a reason ESPN a few years ago started listing lines on game day because they know it's a big, big market. There's a reason CBS Sports.com, which is the company I work for, owns Sportsline, which is a major, gambling and analysis website. There's a reason we started that. And there's a reason every single week during the football season, you have picks against the spread from every outlet. It's a major market, and it's deemed taboo, which is just I don't understand why that's the case. Because again, getting back to the original point, if you got a gambling problem, you know that now. It's not like it's hard to bet.
Well, and I just thought of it literally as you said it, but some of these states that have legal gambling, if you do have a problem, there's ways to get help. If you're doing it illegally, you don't want to go down and say, "Hey, folks, can you help me?" Because they're not going to help you. I mean, Joe down here on 15th Street in McFarland, he's not going to say, "Hey, listen, call this number here. I'm taking too much of your money, and you're not able to pay your bills."
No, without a doubt. I mean, you have it. Basically, it's mandated. I know it's mandated in Mississippi where you have to talk about how to reach out for help. I know that it's at least mentioned on signs going into the casinos in Vegas. So yeah, I mean, in Atlanta where I live, there's really nothing for that. I mean, I'm sure there's a gambling addiction hotline, but I mean, let's be honest about why people think that it's bad. They think it's bad because people get addicted, it tears families apart, you lose money, you hit rock bottom, all this other stuff. How is that different from eating junk food? How is that different from drinking a little bit too much? How is that really different from adultery? Because that tears families apart and that ruins people financially. Like, you can't legislate morality. And some people who gamble, like myself, I don't really gamble on sports, I like to go play craps, handle it pretty well. Others are addicted, and that's awful, and they need to get help for it. But that should not be a reason to prevent something that should help everybody else out, which I think gambling will, sports gambling and casino gambling, because if it's regulated, it means it's taxed. If it's taxed, that means it gets funneled to the schools, parks, libraries, whatever. And society in general is better off. Individuals may struggle with it, but again, if they have a problem with it, they probably are struggling with it now.
And I'm not trying to look at all the positives, because I may even ask you a negative coming up in a couple of minutes, but, it does not take long to drive through. I mean, go back 20 years and drive through the state of Mississippi. I mean, I look like I was going through a third world country.
Yeah.
Go there now and look at the high schools and the elementary schools. I mean, they look like the community colleges. I mean, they're gigantic. And it's like, I'm not saying that it changed, but it did bring a lot of economic boom into that area.
Well, yeah, without a doubt. And I think the interesting thing about this is last week, I don't think people talked about this enough. The state of West Virginia worked out a deal with the University of West Virginia and Marshall that basically says, and West Virginia is going to be one of the first states we think to have this sort of setup already in place. They made a deal where gambling revenue, whatever it is, from casino gambling, part of that, I think it's 1% or a little bit less than that, gets driven directly to those two schools, which, I mean, that's awesome. Don't you want that? So, yeah, I mean, Mississippi, I think, is another great example, because you look at some of those casinos. Yeah, they've driven a ton of revenue to a lot of different places in that state. But I think in terms of quick fix, in terms of this, if you've been to the Biloxi, to the Beau Rivage in Biloxi, you look at that air quote sports bar, looks an awful like a sports book. So I would imagine all you got to do is turn around some walls like it does on Wheel of Fortune, and you got yourself a sports book. So it benefits a lot of different aspects of society. I think the opposition never made sense to me, and I'm glad we're sort of taking a step in the right direction.
And I'm just now reading the Clarion Ledger. Someone just sent me a headline: Mississippi expected to have sportsbook betting by the end of June after the high court ruling.
Yep, they've been planning for it. They've all been planning for it. So,
well, as you said, I mean, they already had the infrastructure in place. They were just waiting, which a lot of people that follow this industry, and I know you and I have talked about this before, they knew this day was coming. They just didn't know at what point.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, William Hill, which is an ownership group that owns a bunch of casinos, their dog track or horse track in New Jersey which is I think outside of Philadelphia, just over the water. Their horse track they built it in, has an entire like grand ballroom, convention room that quite literally is a sports book. It's got a bar. It's right next to the casino. It's literally a sports book without, the actual ticket takers. All they got to do is put the ticket takers in. They already have that equipment already put in place. So, yeah, I mean, it's the interesting thing. And on our show today on Sirius XM, we talked about this, and we talked to a guy out who is the co-host of Brent Musburger's show, My Guys in the Desert. And he said one thing that colleges might do is say that there's a copyright infringement for casinos taking bets and using their logos and names. And while he said that, his name's Ron Flatter, he said if that's the case, it has no legal grounds to stand on, but it might be something that the NCAA does to sort of push off a decision on this. And, I think that's going to be short-lived because it doesn't make any sense. And in fact, the NCAA was listed as a defendant in the case that ultimately led to this. But that might be a way that they sort of delay this to get their ducks in a row. But I just don't think it's going to be long because, well, let's be honest. If you're a casino company, if you're MGM, William Hill, whatever, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're looking at this ruling and states start pushing back too much from a legislative standpoint,
oh wow,
I think there's enough people and enough support on the side of legalized gambling where MGM and all these other casinos guys are going to say, hey, look, if you're not with us, if you're going to prevent us from coming into your state and doing business, we're going to get you fired. We're going to get somebody else elected who can.
But are we not going to be insaturated with commercials for the next, let's say, 2 years? Because Las Vegas is going to go out and lobby against this. They're going to remind us how bad this is because it's $4.8 billion was bet on sports betting in that state just last year. We're going to hear they're going to lobby like crazy to try to keep that money there.
Oh, I think it's the exact opposite.
Really?
I think it's 100% the exact opposite because MGM owns the Bow in Biloxi. William Hill owns a ton. Harrah's are everywhere. It's not like these big companies are not used to crossing state lines. They already have, and they know the business better than anybody else. So the way they're going to love it because they can go, whether it be pure ownership or owner operator or just pure operator, they're the ones who have the expertise at all this. And so they're chomping at the bit to get into different states because they know that their profit share and their revenue is about to skyrocket because they're the only ones who know how to do this.
2 weeks from tomorrow, you and I will be down in Sandestin. Today, 2 weeks from today, we'll be sitting on the beach enjoying the wonderful sun. But 2 weeks from tomorrow, the SEC meetings will begin. And something tells me this may change a lot of those meetings down there. If it was not already on the agenda, this has to be on the agenda, right?
Oh, I won't be there, incidentally. Dennis is going for us for CBS.
Okay. Oh, man, you drew the shortest straw.
I know. I'm disappointed to miss it this year. But, I think it absolutely is going to be a pretty big factor. The ACC is actually meeting right now in Amelia Island. I would imagine this becomes a pretty hot topic just today in Amelia Island. But I think it's going to be discussed, and there's really nothing that the conference can do about it in terms of meeting with ADs and coaches and whatever. But I think what you will see, and we'll see if the ACC does this right now, and I'll see if the SEC does it in a few weeks. I think you can come to a sort of conference-wide platform that says, okay, we're for this, we're against this. Here's how we think this should be done. How do we address players not being paid but being, more apt to be bet on and made money off of? I think all those issues are going to be at play, and I think they have to be addressed. And I think they have to be addressed quickly because if there's nothing to slow anybody down or no regulation in terms of who gambles on what, then people are going to start betting more on college athletes in about a month. And there's going to be a lot of people asking, where's my fair share? Where's my take of this?
Yeah, and I just wonder if they're going to, what approach are they going to take? Could you really – think about this. Could you really think about a sports book, let's say, because you're not going to have it on campus, but let's say in Baton Rouge or in Starkville or here in Tuscaloosa or in
Northport.
Yeah, and there's so much building going on. I mean, could you see that 10 years or maybe not even that? I mean, we have Mississippi saying that they're already going to react. I mean, could you see that? I mean, could you see the sports book right there close as you're walking to the game? You just go in and, drop a $100 bill on a game? I mean, as you're going in, I mean, could you see that?
Without a doubt, I could. I think
Wow.
in college, it's obviously not going to be on campus.
Sure,
but
right.
Yeah, I mean, they've got one in LSU. I mean, that boat's not that far from campus.
You're
so,
absolutely right.
I think it's at this point, it's just going to happen. That ball's been going down that hill for a long, long time, and I think you will. I think it'll be beneficial in a lot of ways. I mean, again, and it will be problematic because you will have people that are irresponsible that lose money or whatever. Some have gambling problems, some don't. But that's lessons in life that you kind of have to learn. And not to say that I don't feel bad for those people, but because I do feel bad for them. But yeah, I would imagine if they allow college athletics to somehow work in a way for players from all sports to have some sort of cut of what goes on, then you're going to see significant push for casinos relatively close, like in Tuscaloosa, maybe in Northport, and Auburn, maybe put one in downtown Opal, whatever. It doesn't matter. I think that will happen.
So I just got a tweet coming in. Are you telling me that they're going to be able to fix that road between Birmingham and Atlanta that they've been working on for 30 years? I mean, will they have tax money? I'm just kidding, but I mean, it's
30 years. 30 years. It's been like 60 years at this point.
Hey, it's like the road from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham. This thing has been, I promise you, I arrived here in 2000, and they've been working on it ever since. And we're still not even, I don't think we're even done.
I 20 between Birmingham and Atlanta. I at times I've thought of either driving to Chattanooga and then coming back down, or going down to Columbus and coming back up that way, or going down to Montgomery and coming back up that way, because that's the most horrific driving experience of all time.
Yeah, and those little Smoky Bears like to hang out in those little curves, and
they really do.
It's like a speed trap the whole entire way to Atlanta.